Nice.
Give Harmony her turn. And then
Sure.
if anybody else wants to try too.
Yeah, we can all chant it.
Yeah.
Okay. Om Vande Gurunam Charanarvinde Sandarashita Swatma Sukhavabode Nishreyase Jangali Kayamane Samsara Hala Halamoha Shantaye Abahu Purushakaram Shankachikrasi Darhinam Sahasra Shirasam Shwetam Pranamami Patanjalim Om.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was lovely. What about you, Elizabeth? Do you chant this one? Oh, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Okay. No, I don't know this one. I've just been kind of working with the pronunciation because it's not one that's part of the tradition, that's our tradition that we normally use.
So what's an invocation that you would normally use?
One would be we could use the Sahana. And there's I think that the invocations that Leslie handed out for today, I think that those are the invocations we usually use in Vedic chant, and then the Krishnamacharya, tradition, or Disakachar tradition. And so,
well, while we're
I
waiting,
think everyone knows Sahana, right? Okay, although you may know it differently a little differently than I chant it. But.
Well, if you would be so kind as to lead us in that.
Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to try that has chanted that before, just so we can hear a different variation? So everybody
be happy to chant the Ashtanga opening mantra.
Oh, wonderful.
It's been a while. So I had to hit my cheat sheet. Om Vande Gurunam Sharanaravinda Sandarshita Savatma Sukhavabode Nishrase Jangale Kayamane Samsara Hala Hala Moha Shantiye Abahu Purushakaram Shanka Shakrasi Darinam Sahasra Shirasram Shvetam Pranami Patanjalim. Om.
Lovely, thank you. And now I can say good afternoon to Leslie.
Good afternoon.
Came in at the perfect time.
Am I? Okay. Good afternoon. My apologies, everyone. I was taking a ukulele class outdoors, and I rushed to get back. What did I just miss? I missed someone chanting something.
Yes, Andy led us in Vande Gurunam, and Harmony and I also did that, and Elizabeth led us in Sahana Vavatu.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. Would anybody else care to lead us in something? Thank you, Elizabeth, for leading us in Sahana Vavatu. Hello, Jean. So my apologies again for being late. Do you all have the handout that I sent out today? I'd like you to take a look at the handout that reads Invocations, Prarthana, slokah. At the beginning of every Vedic chant class, we chant this whole thing that's on the first page before class. I propose that we just do one verse at a time until we get it, under our belt. And on the second page, which I've put on the second side, is what we always do at the end of our class. So today, this is yet another invocation. I would like us all to chant the first 4 lines. Shuklam Baradharam Vishnum Shashi Varnan Chatur Bhujam Prasanna Vadanan Dhyayet Sarva Vigno Pashantaye. So it's an invocation. It's an invocation. Hello, Sandra. Oh, it looks like it's chilly there. It's an invocation to Lord Vishnu. Shuklam. I'll translate some of it for you. I'm not sure that I have it all, but please, Elizabeth, chime in when you so desire. Shukla is a word for white. In the Yoga Sutras, there's, I believe it's either in the 3rd or the 4th chapter, Karma Shukla Trividam something. It talks about how the actions are neither the actions of a yogi, or the actions are neither white nor black. Karma Shukla. Anyway, Shuklam means white. Baradharam, dharam, holding something white to Lord Vishnu. Shashi Varna, Varnam means the form. Varna also means what we're doing when we chant. We're articulating our tongues in our mouth. Varna is Sanskrit articulation. But Varna also can mean the color or the form. Shashi literally means rabbit. But in India, the word Shashi often means the moon, because when we're in India, if you look up, and I don't recall looking at the moon when I was in India, but for some reason, it resembles the shape of a rabbit. So Shashi Varnam really refers to the moon. Chatur, 4, Bhujam, 4 arms. Prasanna Vadanan Dhyayet Sarva Vigno Pashantaye. Upashantaye. Sarva, all. We're paying homage to Lord Vishnu. And Elizabeth, do you have any more specifics on this, on the translation of this? Vignam.
I don't even remember that we talked about a translation for it. So whatever you're doing is just adds to my, my knowledge of it. So.
Yeah, okay, yeah. We just were made to chant it, and they didn't care if we knew what, what the meaning was or not. But thank you. So let's just chant this and let's see what happens. I'll chant it 3 times, and if you all already have a sense of how you learn best, then do what you will. If you want to hear it in silence, that's fine. And then join in when you feel comfortable. And you have the words in front of you. But if you would prefer to just hear it without reading anything, that's okay too. But knowing all of us and how we depend on our sight, it's always nicer to have the words in front of us. So it sounds like this. Shuklam Bharadharam Vishnu Shashivarnan Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanan Dhyayet Sarva Vigno Pashantaye. So that's how it sounds when we all chant as a group with Sonia or with Menaka Desikachar. So I'm going to break that down and then repeat each line so that you can repeat with me. I think that's a good way to start. Shuklam Bharadharam Vishnu Shuklam Bharadharam Vishnu. Going to the next line. Shashivarnan Chaturbhujam. Shashivarnan Chaturbhujam. Now we'll put those 2 lines together. Shuklam Bharadharam Vishnu Shashivarnan Chaturbhujam. Now we'll move on to the 3rd line. Prasannavadanan Dhyayet. Prasannavadanan Dhyayet. Sarva Vigno Pashantaye. Sarva Vigno Pashantaye. Now those last 2 lines together. Prasannavadanan Dhyayet. Sarva Vigno Pashantaye. Unmute yourselves, please, and please tell me what you would like to do with respect to these 4 lines. Would you just like to chant it all the way through, or would you like to go over a particular part, any particular word or line? Yes, Jean.
I have a question, and I know this is my first time, so maybe this has already been asked, but I have a confusion about sometimes the M is an N at the end, like Varnam. You said more like Varnam, Chatur. So can you, and I'm sorry if that's a repeat, but can you kind of explain how you know when you should say an N or a
Yes, and first of all, I'm repeating this almost every week, and there's no reason to apologize, so welcome. You're jumping in. So the M, when we see the letter M, you may have heard me explain before, and it is accompanied with a dot. Usually I place the dot above the M, but you might sometimes see it underneath the M. That just seems to be a personal preference of the person who writes it down. What's that's telling us? That has a name, and it's called Anusvara. Anusvara, which literally means after the vowel or after the sound. And so after the vowel, or Baradharam Vishnum, actually what it's saying is we have to look at the consonant that follows that M with the dot. And we have to understand mouth positions and what mouth position that following consonant is in. So in that first line, we have two anusvaras at the end of Shuklam Baradharam, and then the second one is at the end of Baradharam. Baradharam Vishnum. Now, following Shuklam, we get the B in Baradharam. So everyone just say Baradharam. Say it again. Baradharam. Ba. So can you feel that ba initiating at the lips? That is the position 5 sound. And it happens to match the position 5 sound of the M. No change is needed there. So in this case, it's Shuklam Bara. So everyone do that. Shuklam Bara. Then if we look ahead to Vishnum, now the V is literally the marrying of the top front teeth to the lower lip, but it is treated as a true position 5. So once again, we have no need to make that change from the M. It can stay an M, so that if I go from Baradharam to the end of the line, we end up with Baradharam Vishnum. So everyone do that. Baradharam Vishnum. And always, when you rehearse this, especially on your own, you can take as much time as you like to feel the vibration at the lips. It's a hopefully a very pleasurable feeling that ba. There's a big vibration happening at the lips there. So what ends up happening in the first line, just chant it with me if you like. Shuklam Baradharam Vishnum. It all flows together pretty darn nicely. Shuklam Baradharam Vishnum. So there, Jean and everybody, there's no change. However, in the second line, we have one anusvara only, and it's before the word chatur. Now everyone go to the word chatur and say that out loud. Chatur, chatur. Chatur begins, this is a second mouth position or a soft palate sound, cha. So in order to access it, I often tell people to make the sound of an E, as in Isha. So everyone say E. Now, after the E, just draw the broad part of your tongue up to the soft palate and then release it to form the sound E, cha, cha. Can you all do that? Cha. So then cha is what we know of and think of as a sound that emanates from the soft palate. So from Varnam, then we go to Chatur. if we want to make this flow of sound most economical as possible, then we change that M at the end of Varnam to be the N with the tilde. Nya. So everyone bring the fat part of your tongue up to the soft palate and say nya, nya. And we come back to a word. Say the word for number 5, which is pancha, pancha, pancha. Now isolate the n and the cha and say cha, cha. That is the sound we make when we're sounding Varnan Chatur Bhujam. So the whole line is Shashi Varnan Chatur Bhujam. Everyone do that line. Shashi Varnan Chatur Bhujam. It's interesting always to me. Sometimes it feels as though whoever wrote the line was preparing the tongue for something. So I don't think it's an accident that shashi, the sh, those 2 S's with the dashes over them, those are second mouth position sibilant sounds as well. It's as though they're warming up the back of the tongue to go right there. Shashi Varnan Chatur Bhujam. Is that making sense? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay. And then the next line, we get a dental sound. Prasanna Vadanan Dhyayet. So once again, if we have a question as to how we should sound that anusvara at the end of Prasanna Vadanam, we have to look to the DH, and that is a dental sound where the tongue comes to the front top teeth. So everyone place the tongue at the front top teeth and say dhya, dhya. We also have to add breath, so include the abdomen. Dhya, dhya. And if it weren't hard enough, they have a Y in there. So it's dhya. That is not an easy word. Dhyayet. Dhyana has to do with dhyanam, putting our focus there. So the da of dhya is telling the tongue to go to the teeth. So that's telling the tongue to go there for our nasal sound. And we end up with Prasanna Vadanan Dhyayet. Everyone. Prasanna Vadanan Dhyayet. Once again, in Prasanna Vadanan Dhyayet, it's as though that word were preparing the tongue to be at position 4, the teeth, to prepare us for that anusvara. Prasanna Vadanan Dhyayet. The tongue is there already. And then finally, 4th line, yay, no anusvara, a holiday. So is this clear to everyone? Okay.
So it sounds like that when they M, the dot above it or below it, just you have to look and see what the following consonant is. It's going to follow that dental position. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and the more we do it, and the point of looking at the consonant is to know as quickly as possible where that tongue is going. Because this writing is not speaking to our mind. It's speaking to our tongue. It's speaking to our tongue. So let's do this all together. One more time. Okay, here we go. Shup Shuklam Bharadharam Vishnu Shashivarnan Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanan Dhyayet Sarva Vigno Pashantaye. Does anyone have any more questions about that? Would you like to move on? Okay, we'll begin every session with this verse until it's so comfortable, then we're going to move on to the next verse. I'm going to aim for every week adding on a verse so that next week we'll include the yasya and so on and so forth. So, because some of you, and I hope all of you are interested in this, get out the Bhagavad Gita that I typed out for you. And after I had printed it out, I realized that it's a good idea when we're chanting the Bhagavad Gita to know that there are different meters. But in the Bhagavad Gita, I think there are only two. There might be a third one hidden somewhere that I haven't discovered yet. But in the Bhagavad Gita, in terms of chanting, because this is a chant class, we're not going to study the text too much. But what I'd like to say is that if you have a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, study it or read it for yourself, especially chapter 2. And if you're already acquainted with the Bhagavad Gita and you know certain verses from either the first or the second chapter, and even if you are familiar with an English translation that speaks to your heart, if you have a request and would like to learn to chant any particular verse, let us know ahead of time and we'll chant that. So I want you to focus on the ones that are dear to you, the ones that mean something and resonate in you. And but what I did for all of our sakes was, our most ambitious comment was, well, let's chant an entire chapter. So then someone suggested, well, we may as well start by chanting all of chapter 2. Well, chapter 2 has over 70 verses. So we've really picked a monster. However, there's so many gems in chapter 2. But I thought it would be nice to learn to chant the very first verse in the very first chapter. And so I put it there. I only put the first 2 verses of the first chapter just because it sets us up. And there are many books on the Bhagavad Gita that explain what's going on. And I really did not feel like typing any of that out. It goes on forever. I mean, it's another book in itself, just discussing it. Certainly, if you have a copy of Winthrop Sargent's book, here's an old copy. I'm particularly fond of this because this gives us the exact translation of every word in each verse. And it also tells us what role that word is playing, if it's a noun or a verb or an adjective, and if it's a noun or a verb, if it's in the singular, dual, or plural case. And what I like about the very first verse in the first chapter is that it reminds us that in the Bhagavad Gita, somebody is asking a question and somebody is telling the story. Dhritarashtra is the name of a king, and he is a blind king. He is the king of the family who are the enemies of Arjuna. That's simply put. I mean, but the thing is, the family who are the energies of Arjuna are Arjuna's very own family. They're his cousins, apparently. And I'm not going to say anymore because I am not an expert on context. It's just that this blind king, there is a battle that is about to begin. And the blind king is on the sidelines wanting to witness it, but he's blind and he can't see. Therefore, he has to ask one of his servants, a man called Sanjaya, what is going on. So I've offered a translation of these two verses. And what I'm asking you to do for all of chapter 2 and the rest is to find your own translation, because it was just a lot to type up. So, so anyway, what I've offered here is Dhritarashtra. He says, "Oh, Sanjaya, tell me what happened at Kurukshetra." So Kshetram means the field, and the field of the Kurus, the family known as the Kurus, the field of Dharma. Tell me what happened there at this field of Dharma, where my family and the Pandavas gathered to fight. And then chapter 2, and then verse 2, Sanjaya replies, having surveyed the forces of the Pandavas arrayed for battle, Prince Duryodhana approached his teacher, Drona, and spoke. So here it goes. We're being told Dhritarashtra said something. Sanjaya replies and says, well, okay, Duryodhana said something to his teacher. So there are these dialogues within dialogues within dialogues. And of course, what we're concerned with is the dialogue between Arjuna and Lord Krishna. Duryodhana, I can tell you, means dirty fighter. So he's the enemy of Arjuna's family. And it's interesting, Duryodhana, why he would be called such a name, dirty fighter. Anyway, that said, would you like to now learn to chant the very first verse? It's good to know the first word in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. It's the name of the blind king. And there are some commentaries who discuss his blindness, not that he's just only physically blind, but he's blind to what is right and what is wrong. It all gets very internal. Anyway, here's what it can sound like. Dhritarashtra uvacha dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta mamaka pandavaschaiva kimakurvata sanjaya. I'm going to do that again, and I'm just going to repeat each line by itself. So I'll call, and then we'll have response. Dhritarashtra uvacha. Dhritarashtra uvacha. Dharma kshetre kurukshetre. Dharma kshetre kurukshetre. Samaveta yuyutsavaha. Samaveta yuyutsavaha. Mamaka pandavaschaiva. Mamaka pandavaschaiva. Pandavaschaiva Kimakurvata Sanjaya Kimakurvata Sanjaya. So before you reply anything, let's just chant it all the way through and see what we get. Dhritarashtra. Excuse me, I'm going to do it over again. I sort of tripped over those. Okay, here we go. I'm going to start with Om. Om. Dhritarashtra Uvacha Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yuyutsavaha Mamaka Pandavaschaiva Kimakurvata Sanjaya. So how are your tongues? How's your breath? Did you wrap your tongues around this? Shall we move onward or stay with this verse? What's
Leslie? Oh, sorry. Leslie, could you just do the fourth line, the second word, the Pandava, how you skip from Pandava to the next bit?
Sure. Pandavaschaiva, Pandavaschaiva. Sometimes I go up in pitch, never mind. What I want you to be concerned about mostly is the articulation. Pandavaschaiva, shcha. That shcha, it's the same as yoga chitta, only it's a cha instead of a chit. Was that helpful? Anything else on this verse? Yes.
The word that comes before that, could you just chant that line again?
Yes. You know, Elizabeth, I know in Vedic chanting we would go ma, pan, but I'm not going to do that. I did it when I first recited it, but I think it's better to keep it throaty. Mamaka, pa, mamaka, mamaka, pandavaschaiva, mamaka. Or we could do it, mamaka, pan, mamaka, pandavaschaiva. I'm beginning to prefer that way. We just have to have the intention of making that ah long and the visarga there. Mamaka pandavaschaiva. That's okay when we're doing it slowly, but if we speed it up, mamaka pandavaschaiva, we may only have time to go. Is that making any sense to anybody? So when we go slowly, it's one way, and maybe when we go quickly, it's another way. But we'll stay more or less slow for a while. Then we'll chant it fast in front of people, and everyone will think how wonderful we are, or not. Should we move to the second verse? Okay. Sanjaya Uvacha, Sanjaya Uvacha, Drishtva tu Pandavanikam, Drishtva Drishtvatu pandavanikam vyudhan duryodhanas tada vyudhan duryodhanas tada acharyamupasangamya acharyamupasangamya raja vachanamabravit raja vachanamabravit. Excuse me, I did a long E, and unless I misspelled it, it should be a short I in abravit. So it should be raja vachanamabravit abravit. Everyone just chant that. Abravit, abravit. I'm often asked why at the end of a phrase, if the final sound is a T, does it sound like we're adding a different syllable? That's just how it's done in chanting often. That final T gets we don't count it as a syllable, but it's sounded there. Let's chant that all together. I'll begin with Om. Om. Sanjaya uvacha Drishtva tu pandavanikam vyudhan duryodhanastada acharyamupasangamya raja vachanamabravit Sanjaya uvacha Drishtva tu pandavanikam vyudhan duryodhanastada acharyamupasangamya raja vachanamabravit. Unmute yourselves. Questions, comments?
Could you just do the second to last line, which is all one word, one more time? Maybe two more times.
Yes. So if we were going to divide it up into two words, acharyam and then upasangamya. But I put them all together because that's how it was in the book, and I don't want you to stop there. It should be flowing. But if you want to put a line between the M and the U, you can, just to know if you wanted to look up upasangamya or acharyam. Also, I just want to point out, since you brought my attention to that line, the N with the dot over it, sometimes you'll see the M with the dot over it. But I thought I would do us all a favor, because we do want to chant sangamya instead of samgamya, because it's just easier on the mouth, easier on the tongue. Sometimes you'll see S-A-M with a dot over it and then G-A-M-Y-A. Apacharyam upasamgamya, which wouldn't be wrong, but there's so much sounding going on in these verses that the more economical we can be with the tongue, the easier it will be in the end. Acharyamupasangamya. Acharyamupasangamya. Is that clear, Patty? Is that okay? Now we'll chant both verses together. Would anyone like to chant it for us? Anything? A line, a word, an entire verse? Both verses? Okay, silent. I'm not seeing anybody in the other. Shall we chant both verses together? Okay. Mute yourselves. Om Dhritarashtra Uvacha Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Mamakaha Pandavaschaiva Kimakurvata Sanjaya. Sanjaya Uvacha Drishtva tu Pandavanikam Vyudhanduryodhanastada Acharyamupasangamya Raja Vachanamabravita. Again. Dhritarashtra Uvacha Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yuyutsavaha Mamakaha Pandavaschaiva Kimakurvata Sanjaya. Sanjaya Uvacha Drishtva tu Pandavanikam Vyudhanduryodhanastada Acharyamupasangamya Raja Vachanamabravita. Are we having fun yet? Unmute yourselves. Give me some feedback. Are you enjoying this?
It's very hard.
It's very hard. So therefore, perhaps frustrating and not yet enjoyable, Andy?
I love it. I'm just saying it's very hard.
Okay. Andy, why don't you pick out something that you find particularly hard and let's all do it together.
Let me see.
I guess it could be anything, huh?
The second to the last line of the second verse is
okay. What is difficult about it for you? Is it just the daunting feeling you get when you see the letters all like that? Because it's so long?
I guess it's because it's so long, yeah.
Okay, let's try something. Everybody, turn your paper over and don't read it at all. And just follow me. Acharya. Acharya. And now I'm going to add the M. Acharyam. Acharyam. 2 more times. Acharyam. Acharyam. Then upa. Upa. Upasam. 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 Now I'm going to change that to an Upasangam. 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 Then Sangam ya. Sangam ya. Sangam ya. Now, still not reading anything. Acharyam. Acharyam. Upasam. Upasam. Upasangam ya. Upasangam ya. Acharyam. Upasangam ya. I broke my own rules. Excuse me. Acharyam. Upasangam ya. Acharyam. Upasangam ya. Acharyam. Upasangam ya. Acharyam. Upasangam ya. Okay, my voice is going to hell. So how is that, Andy? Andy, would you like to recite that for us?
No.
Okay, you don't have to. But was that helpful?
Yes, that's very helpful. Yeah.
Okay. And maybe it will flow more easily if we link it to the final line. Acharyamupasangam ya. Raja vachanam abravita. Raja vachanam abravita. The king said, vachanam, Raja, the king, abravita. Is there any place else, Andy, or anyone?
Sandra, can we do the first line like that? Or the first word,
Yes.
even the drita. I get stuck on the drita. And
That king with the impossible to pronounce name.
yeah.
Dr. And it's interesting, Dhritarashtra. I have to go back to the book and see what the actual translation is, but Drish means to see. And this is the blind king, the king who can't see. So maybe Dhritarashtra means blind, the one who can't see. Anyway. Dr. So a long time ago, I know I gave us some coaching on whenever we do the, which is whenever there's an H sound. So let's see if I can aim this thing. So I have my hands on my abdomen, and it should be a little slightly below the abdomen. So whenever we have an H sound, we want to support making that sound with our abdomen. So we have, in this case, dr, dr, dr. And I don't know why such words are in the Sanskrit language, maybe just to keep us from our minds wandering, because certainly it brings my focus on what I'm doing. Drita. So everyone say drita. Drita. And then add ra. Drita ra. Drita ra. And then shtra. Let's say shtra by itself. Shtra. It's a third mouth position sound. Shtra. Let's put a vowel in between each of those consonants, starting with the sh, from sh, tra. So we have sha. So everyone say sha, and then ta, and then ra. Now say shatara, shatara, shatara. Now let's see if we can get rid of those vowels and say sh. Just do shta. Now do shtara, shtara. Oh, Harmony, bye-bye. Thank you for being here. I hope it gives you something to practice.
Leslie, would you just move your camera up a little bit? I can't see. That's
Tired
okay.
of seeing my
Thank you.
my wonderful, my
Bye,
roller. Oh, bye, Harmony. Thank you. Dritarash shtara. Let's do that. Shtara. And then it's shtara. Shtra. Shtra. If it's too hard with the tongue flutter, shtra, shtra, shtra. Drita rashtra. Drita rashtra. Is it coming? Is it coming a little bit better for people? Okay. So that first line goes Dhritarashtra uvacha. Dhritarashtra uvacha. Dhritarashtra uvacha. Then dharma kshetre kuru kshetre. So we'll go back to the beginning. Dhritarashtra uvacha. Dharma kshetre kuru kshetre. Dharma. Now let's try something different. Let's, instead of chanting it, let's say that whole verse. Let's see what happens. Okay. So call and response. Dhritarashtra uvacha. Now you. Dhritarashtra uvacha. Dharma kshetre Kuru kshetre. Now you. Dharma kshetre. Kuru kshetre. Samaveta yuyutsavaha. Samaveta yuyutsavaha. Mamakaha pandavaschaiva. Mamakaha pandavaschaiva. Kim akurvata sanjaya. Kim akurvata sanjaya. A little Sanskrit learning. Perhaps you remember this, Andy. Kim, whenever we see the word Kim, it implies a question. So wherever you see the word Kim, it means someone is asking something. And on that first line, lovely line really, on the field of dharma, on the field of battle, literally. Kshetram is field. Kshetre is the locative, not tense, but the locative, call them, you know. You know, Andy. It's the locative, you know. Kshetram is the subject. Kshetre is the where it is. So on that field, which field? On that field of dharma, and also the same field, which is the field of battle. Battle, to fight. Or sorry, not fight, not battle. The field of the Kurus. Yuyut savaha. They're preparing for battle. Yuj or yut. Have we gone over this enough for you to practice this if you so desire? Don't lose heart. If this is difficult, this is a difficult verse to pronounce. For some reason, there are so many third mouth position sounds and compound consonants, and it's not easy for the Western mouth, the Western tongue, because we were not taught these things. If you go to the next page, you'll see we begin at the beginning of chapter 2. Bob Gilbo advised me, I was telling him, you know, how I was feeling daunted by this undertaking. He suggested that we begin with chapter 11. But what I'd like for all of you to do is go over verses 1 through 10 and 11 during the week, if you have time. Read them in English and just determine for yourself if there's anything in 1 through 10 that speaks to you at all.
Which chapter are you? Is that chapter 11 or chapter 2?
I'm sorry, chapter 2.
Oh,
going through verse. I'm sorry. Yeah, he meant start at verse 11, because verse 11 is where Lord Krishna gets to the heart of the matter in terms of what he's trying to communicate to Arjuna. We've gone over time, and I think that's enough for now. I wanted to do more, but it's, you know, it takes the time that it takes. What I'd like for us to do, if you can all bear with me on this, is go back to that invocation, and let's chant that closing invocation all together. Or I'll chant it once, and then you can repeat.
Leslie, just before you do that,
Yes.
How do you pronounce the name of the slokah? Is the K silent or?
Yeah, it's Anushtub shloka, or Trishtub shloka.
Hang on, I'm not in.
Anushtub. Oh, wait, what did you?
I'm on this second page, this one.
Oh, okay.
Is that what you meant?
Oh, okay. Yes, thank you. It is pronounced, it's ksha, kshama, shloka, kshama. You may not hear me sometimes, but I am saying that K sound. And ksham means to forgive. Ksham, kshamyate, kshama, the shloka of forgiveness. So it sounds like this. Yadaksharapadabhrashtam matrahinantu yadbhavet tatsarvang kshamyatameva Narayana namostute. And then Shrimate Narayanaya namo namaha. So we'll try to end each class with this. So do it with me. Just, even if it feels like you're fumbling, just do it with me and see if some of it comes. And notice kshamyatan, again, kshamyatan. There's that ksha sound again. So we have that twice in that verse. Here we go, all together, yadakshara. Yadakshara padabrashtam matrahi nantu yadbhavet tat sarvang kshamyatan deva Narayana namostute Shrimate Narayanaya namo namaha. And then many of you may find the next part familiar, and Jean we'll go through it twice. Just catch on when you can. Kayena vacha manasendriyairva buddhyatmanava prakrite swabhavat karomi yadyat sakalam parasmai narayana yeti samarpayami. Let's do that one again, especially for Jean's sake, because this might be new to her. And also for Andy, for everybody. Kayena vacha manasendriyairva buddhyatmanava prakrite swabhavat karomi yadyat sakalam parasmai narayana yeti samarpayami. And then finally, we'll do it twice. Sarvam Shri Krishnarpanamastu. Sarvam Shri Krishnarpanamastu. So I think I was a little all over the place with respect to what I'd like you to do. If you can, read over any English translation of chapter 2, or 1 if you're up for it. And then look over in English the verses 1 through 10. And if there are any that move you or that you would like to chant, let us know next week and we will chant them. Otherwise, we will begin at number 11. That's where the meat of the message seems to come. And we'll start there. And then we'll see what happens, you know, if we can get some succession there. And hopefully, if I have time, I'll type out the rest of the verses. And what my intention is to get all of chapter 2 on the same file. So I'll probably keep the file named the same. And then then when I'm ready, I'll send it to you. And then you can delete the first one and then replace it with this one so that we don't get all confused, which I'm really good at doing. Do you have any comments or questions or desires you wish expressed?
So I actually do have a question. You know, obviously I understand the lineage of Desikachara, Krishnamacharya, but I'm totally unfamiliar with these mantras because I studied more under Ashtanga and an Iyengar lineage, right? So could you help me with maybe just a few moments of context on these mantras when Desikachara was teaching, or the Desikachara lineage today? Are they still used?
Yes, the invocations, they are used particularly in Vedic chanting, at least with Sonia Nelson, who was Desikachara's devoted student for more than 30 years. And also Menaka, Desikachara's widow, if you were to study with her, we use the same invocations.
Okay.
It's just what they've decided. And I don't know if it was something that began with Krishnamacharya. What I can tell you, if you take a look at the invocations, so the first verse is dedicated to Lord Vishnu, and then the next 8 lines really, they are dedicated to Ganesha, really, the ancient Ganesha, the elephant. Nignanti, Vignan, actually just the next 4. And then starting with Jnana Nanda Mayandevam through the following verse, which ends in Hayagriva Mupasmahe. Hayagriva is another name for Lord Krishna, and that is the incarnation of human body with a horse's head. Haya. And a Sanskrit word for horse is haya, as in haya, haya, haya. Hayagriva, the horse god, the horse incarnation of Lord Krishna. So in that first column, we have Lord Vishnu, and then 4 lines to Ganesha, and then 8 lines to Krishna in the form of Hayagriva. And then we have the Guru chant. And then we have dedication to Krishnamacharya. These dedications are made after these teachers have died. So it wasn't Krishnamacharya, but it was Desikachar who said, we will now add this to the invocation. And then after Desikachar passed on, then Menaka and her son Kaushtu and whoever else, the powers that be, they created this beautiful verse to Desikachar. So then we end with Desikachar. So we are honoring all the teachers before. So perhaps
is the whole thing chanted then at the beginning of a class?
The whole thing is chanted at the beginning. And it was never actually taught. I mean, I'm breaking it down for you to give you some comfort, to give you something. But we were just, I was just hanging on by a thread. I didn't know. Sonia kept saying, "Oh, just chant it." And we'd chant it, and I didn't know what was going on, and I just, gradually got it, because and mind you, the first time I learned it was when we were in a 2-week intensive, and we met every morning, and we would chant it every morning. So when you get to do it every day, and you hear the group around you, and you feel like you're the only one who doesn't know what the heck she's doing, why she ever bothered to be there in the first place. Everyone else is doing it beautifully, but eventually it comes.
Yeah.
So.
I feel your pain. I understand that. Yeah, okay.
So little by little, it's amazing how much can be accomplished with simple repetition.
Yeah.
And for us, I don't know, Andy, you strike me as someone who is intellectual, who likes to learn the context. Maybe not, I don't know. I am not. So I am not an intellectual. And I'm one who really couldn't care less what the meaning is. I just trusted the teacher that it was a nice sound, it had nice meaning. So I was always able to focus on the sounds, and I enjoy that, and I have an ear for it. So chanting has always come probably more easily to me than for others. And other people are really taken by the meaning. But now the meaning grows on me too. So that's...
The problem with the meaning of all of this is that, like, I have 3 copies of the Bhagavad Gita, and the meaning is different in all of them, right? So that's the problem with the meaning.
The problem, but also the joy of it, because we don't have to marry ourselves to one person's dictate of what it must be. We go to somebody else, and sometimes I go to Eknath Eswaran, or sometimes I know Bob Gilbo's favorite seems to be Graham Schweig's.
Yeah.
Different authors speak to me at different times. They just might have a feeling from the heart. It may not be a literal translation, but what it means to them and how they take the English language too. And Stephen Mitchell is a very popular one. They speak to us more, but it is always good to come back to Winthrop Sargent, because he's literal. And it's nice to know what each and every word is. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the, I had this question last week, and I felt I have to ask this, because it was like, okay, what's going on? This is essentially the same thing as what we do in Ashtanga and Iyengar yoga, but this is the Desikachar version. But
yeah, right. So now we're married to all 3 lineages. Aren't we lucky?
Exactly. All right, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for asking that. And if I have an agenda, it's that everyone is going to feel comfortable doing the whole damn thing. So darn thing. So that's a long agenda. So we've done our asking for forgiveness. Lord knows we all feel that we need it. Anybody else have anything to say? You're very good to stay on. Thank you, Patty, too, because I don't know if you have to. Patty's got a lot of homeschooling to do with her 10-year-old.
It's all good. This is the reprieve. Must keep my own brain fresh.
Good.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you, everyone.
Patty.
Bye,
Namaste.
everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Bye.
Namaste.
Namaste.
It's fun to see everybody wearing sweaters. We're like like the Australian weather now. It's getting chilly.
We're meeting now, but this is our meeting point, and then we're
right. Opposite. Passing.
Yeah, that's right. Bye.
On that sweet puppy. And what's the puppy's
it's Lola. That's
Lola. How can I forget? I love that name. Hello, Lola. Lola.
That's right. People love to sing that song to her.
Lola. Hello, Lola. Lady.
She's a good girl.
So
well, thank you.
We'll set aside a time. We'll do a time when it would be fun to, and also we'll do a session live with you and Winnie, and then we'll record the session if you like.
Yeah.
So that